Welcome back, guys. So, paint, the great subject of how we put paint in an aircraft. As always, I've got all the parts on my little porcupine stand here. So, engine cowls, gun cowls, engine bearers, instrument panel. We've got the actual cockpit itself. So we've got the floor and the seat assembly, all on a just super glued to a kebab stick. Same with the engine. Everything's pre-assembled into sub-assemblies, and then obviously we have the two aircraft fuselage sides and the wings. And as you can see, it's all been primed in XF85, which is Tamiya rubber black. Sometimes I'll do it in rubber black, sometimes I'll do it in semi-gloss matte or gloss black, and sometimes I'll do it in things like dark grey or even NATO black. It's just really whatever takes my fancy. I thought rubber black would be a good base coat for the RLM66 and the RLM02 interior colours that I predominantly used in German aircraft. So for the RLM2, I'm actually using aqueous hobby colour from Mr. Hobby, H70, which is RLM02 German grey, and then I'm also using Tamiya XF63 German grey. So this is interior, so it's like an olive grey, whereas this is actually a dark German grey. So what's what? Well, the interior of the cockpit is going to be the RLM66, and then pretty much all the other interiors, as far as I can see, are going to be RLM02. So that'll be the wheel wells, the front section or the engine section of the aircraft, interior of the engine panels, and interior of the wheel well doors. So what I'll do is I will get my airbrush charged up with probably RLM66 first. We'll do that, and then we'll come in on the back of that and do the RLM02 colour. So back in a moment. So we're back, and we've got the XF63 RLM66 in the colour cup of the airbrush. Now this is roughly my standard Tamiya mix of 50/50 paint to X28 thinners. Works really well with these airbrushes. Pretty much works really well with any airbrushes, to be fair. So this is the Galeri Premium Mobius with a 0.2 needle in. I've got the Mac valve pretty much wide open. Pressure's running around about 15 to 20 psi. Right. The beauty of painting with black is that you can control the color contrast really well. Let me just see that we're getting this in focus. So zoom in a little bit and adjust out. I'll keep it in the frame. So what we want to do is focus the paint on the highest areas. So for example, here on the corners of the gun breech cover, alright, you want to do the pedals. You want to do along the top edge here. And you'll notice that as you're focusing on that particular spot there, with a fine spray pan with a 0.2 needle affords you, the overspray blown away from where you're concentrating starts creating that natural shadowed area. And it's the same with the seat. So you want to get the colour on the top of the seat back, going down the side. So we'll do the raised areas first, and then just blend it down to create that sort of shadowed area in the bottom of the seat, you know, where the parachute pack would be sitting underneath the pilot. And do the edge of the seat, the rim. And naturally with an airbrush, as you paint these areas, the overspray will gently fill the remaining areas with a shaded, less opaque level of paint, and you end up with a natural highlight, and then you also end up with kind of natural looking shaded areas. It does take a little practice. And yes, you can go too far and end up just colouring the whole cockpit in. But if you're canny with how you spray, and just focus on the areas that your eye is naturally going to be able to see, and where the most light will go in, that will help also to create that natural light and shadow that you get in a cockpit. Now, if there's areas you want as a natural shadow but you don't want it to be perfectly black, then just give them a very, very light dusting. But the main thing with this sort of technique is to know when to stop. So if you look at the cockpit, you should be able to see now that we've got a little bit of shadow, we've got a little bit of highlights, but we've got some built-in interest, and that's before we do any washing or any detail painting, and that's what we want. You just want that natural 3D looking cockpit, basically. It's the same with any model. It's just to help let the paint do the work for you, to build that depth of perception and that depth of detail. Obviously, we're going to have to come in and do some detail painting. We'll do that by hand, but we've got a start there that we can enhance with a little bit of a wash, a sepia wash or something, just to bring out the, well, highlights, the wrong word maybe, enhance the shadowed areas and the joints between the change of surfaces, and then also just to kind of mute back any of the lighter areas that we want to be slightly more in shadow. So we can look at that in a little while. Right, cockpit. In realism, we shouldn't need to paint the front of the cockpit. We'll do that anyway, just so we get the underside of the cockpit cowling. But what we do need to do is paint the cockpit cowling. We've got to think, where's the sun going to be on this? Where's the highlights going to be? So let's just focus on where the highlights are, which will naturally be the edges. They're the ones that will catch the sun and know where. And then we want to catch the front rim here. And there you go. Nicely painted, a little bit of shadow, good general coverage of paint. Right, cockpit sides. You're not actually going to see an awful lot in this. If we get the cockpit, check that's in frame, get the cockpit and lay that down where it's going to be. There's not a huge amount of the side that's going to be visible. Don't actually know when that clips in. Does that clip in there maybe? Yeah, it does. So you can see there, you really are going to see this part here. We'll need to just put a dust and a paint in here. So it's basically here. Now, light will come in that way. The shadows will be underneath. That's the natural way of doing it. So that's how we paint. So just come in with a paint and focus it on the top edge. Like so. Just tickle it in. Top edge of all these raised parts. Some of them are going to be painted a different colour. You see, naturally we've got quite stark shadows underneath, which we can just then come back over gently, blend them in a little bit. and then come back in with a tighter spray. There we go. That's it. It takes no paint at all to put colour in a cockpit. Especially when you're painting it with more grey type black, so the rubber black. You've already given yourself that advantage of coverage. So really all we're doing with this colour is we're just highlighting, we're tinting. We're just changing the hue of what is naturally a grey cockpit with the rubber black, and adding that highlighted RLM 66 field grey type colour. There we go. So that is all the interior grey I'm going to bother painting. Next thing to do, clean out the airbrush, get in the RLM02, and we will get on with painting some of that. So back in a moment. Right, we're back. RLM02 is in the airbrush. Set the cockpit parts aside. Right, this is the advantage of going down the pre-construction, in that we've taken our time, got the kit together, got it all lined up, and then we've opened it back up. We've got all the parts installed, ready for construction. So it means we can get all the interior of the radiator recesses and the wheel wells done, painted and weathered before we put it together, because actually once it's together there really isn't going to be much opportunity to put the paint inside and add the detail. But on the flip side, you're still going to be able to see the inside. So if we don't take the time to get it right before we button it up, then if you're going to look at it and pay close attention, once it's finished, you're going to see that it's lacking a little bit, shall we say. So it's always good to take the time to just make a good effort, push your standards, and always push to improve. So just aside from the paint, we're just going to get a bit of paint flow through. There we go, testing it. Lovely little fine spray pattern. So start with the wheel well top. We'll go for the centers of the panels. And then we'll just come back in and we'll broaden that out a little. There we go. And then blend coat. Bang. Look at that. Nicely done. Get a wash on that, it's going to look amazing. Right, radiators. So we know that this actuator for the front flap needs to be painted. So we'll just go in there and we'll just paint a line along there, because we know roughly that's where you'll see the roof of this area. There we go. That's enough. It's enough just to give the washers something to work with, to add the colour that we're looking for, and to enhance the detail that's in there as a part of the kit. That's really what painting's about. It's obviously to get the right colour on the interior, but a lot how you put the paint down is about how you enhance the detail that the model company's given you in the kit. Check it by flipping it over, just to see that you've got enough coverage. You've not got any dark spots or grey spots or anything showing. I'm quite happy with that. And then we come in to doing the wing itself, and that's much the same as what we did on the other side. So you want to focus on the leading and trailing edges, naturally where the most light is going to get into here. So you want to get that more opaque, full color coat down, and then you want to put that a little bit in the middle to help enhance the fact that there's a reinforcing ribs in that flap, and then they'll be picked out when we put some wash on. And do that edge there, because you've got to change the level there. It will naturally catch a little bit of light. Over in the wheel well, you just want to put a dust coat in. And then from the top you can come into the sides as well. Again, try and focus the paint on the edges that are going to catch the most daylight. Sometimes it's a little tricky to do this whilst in focus. Try my best. There we go. Pop it together. See how it looks. And the other beauty of assembling this is it naturally wants to just click together in one way. There we go. Now's the point to just sort of check and reflect on what you've done. If you think you need some more coverage, put it in now. Just remember not to overdo it. I think I'm quite happy with that. It's going to look brilliant once we get a little bit of wash in there. Right, that's the wings. We've got the other side to do. We'll do that in a minute. Fuselage, then we know we've got to do, if you're going to display this model open, you need to do the interior of the engine cowl. Roughly to there. Dead simple. And then we actually got the engine cowls. Now these things are really nice. They've got loads of really good framing on the inside. Now if you want to display these open, it's going to look absolutely fantastic. So what we can do is flip it up a little bit, focus our paint on the framing, the internal framing. And we'll make that the highlight. So you're spraying 90 degrees to the frame. Okay, and then what we can do is just come in and fill in the areas. Focus your paint on the hinges, work your way down into the panel. There we go. Come back in here, just dress that up a little bit again. And you've got the recess of the gun port here, we can highlight that too. Come in here and highlight the edge. There we go. And that's that painted. Again, wash in there is going to bring that detail out beautifully. So that's pretty much as much as we need to do with the interior colour. It's just a case of me getting on and completing it. So I'm going to do that. I'll get the rest of this all painted up. We'll let it cure up a little bit, and then we'll come back in and we'll do a wash. What we'll probably also do as well whilst the paint's curing is I'll put a dry brush of gunmetal or something over this engine before we look at what we're going to do for painting the exhaust stacks. So there is that too. But I'm not going to waste too much time on the engine because it's going to be all buttoned up. But I'm interested to see how it's going to look. So see you back shortly. So progress has been made. When we left off from the last episode, then we basically got all the base color painting done. And the next job to do was to do a bit of detail painting and put on the cockpit instrument panel decal from Red Fox. So that is this one here from Red Fox Design, I think it is. Is there a part number for it? No. Oh yeah. RFSQS 35011. So, and that's basically the instrument combing. So you've got your instrument panel, you've got side detail panels as well. Now I did mean to film this, but I don't know what happened, but it didn't. Which is a shame, because it was actually a really easy process to do, in that you just wetted the decal sheet down, cut them out to the individual ones you're using at a time, wet them down as you would normal decals, and then you just stick them down with some white PVA glue, and they are absolutely stunning. They really are. Now hopefully you can see that there, but the detail on that instrument panel, second to none. You've got the kind of nice satin finish for the panel and the bezels, and then there's the nice gloss finish for the glass, and the printing is beautiful. Really is. Fits beautifully on the kit parts, absolutely not a problem whatsoever. So we've got the instrument combing done, and then the rest of the parts went on to the right hand side fuselage side. You can see all the sort of fuse butter box. There's something like on this blue pump, I'm presuming, here, and a couple of small bits of dowels. So absolutely stunning, really easy to use. As I said, just clean off the detail as if you were going to stick down photo etch, and then you just stick it down with PVA glue over the paint, and it sticks solid, dries beautiful, and there's not a problem. The rest of the detail in there has just been painted, and then you'll see that there has just been a little bit of a grime wash put in the cockpit, so you've got this kind of dirty, dusty layer here that should marry in with the dirty, dusty layer on the cockpit floor. That done as well. We've also painted the inside of the engine covers, and again it's just a very light oil wash. Not too dark, just that sort of same grime wash that I've used on all the other parts. And we've got it here on the wheel well upper surface, on the inner surface of the upper side of the wing, and on the other instrument engine cowling here, and on the lower chin cowling here. So the only thing I've got to do now is put a little bit of wash in the radiator housings. The radiators themselves have just been painted with Gallery's metallic pen set. Absolutely fantastic pens, really good. I've just painted these with the aluminium colour, because I'm assuming that's what the radiators were. It's a very firm nib with a detailed point, so you can get in all the nooks and crannies without putting paint everywhere. Goes down beautifully, and it's set up and dry now. So for the cost of them, highly recommended. They're a very versatile tool. So the last job to do is to put a bit of a grime wash in there, and to do that I'm just going to use a little bit of Citadel's Nuln oil. So we'll just get some on a flat brush, and then we can just come in and just go in. Oh, and it's activating some of that aluminium. It's not obviously cured just 100% yet. Just brush that towards the radiators and it should be fine. Clean the brush off, so I don't want to put aluminium paint flecks everywhere. Luckily we've gotten away with that. I'm rushing it a little bit, and then same again on the front, just to add a bit of shading to the front of the radiator. So we'll just touch that on. I'm not trying to disturb the pen too much, and that's that. So you can see now we've got those shaded lines back in there on the aluminium, just to dull it down a little bit, make it look a bit more grimy. And then on the upper wing surfaces, just wash off the brush again, on the upper wing surfaces, then we can just come in here, just here, and we'll just paint that down there. And that'll add a little bit of shadow work. There's obviously been some waxy or something in there because you can see it beading off that paint. But that'll... And I like using the Citadel's washes. They're quite versatile paints for quick jobs like this, just to give you that sort of grimy, oily look. They can be easily thinned with Tamiya X20A, and they can be thinned with water. But they do an amazing job. And if you wanted to highlight your... There's always some release agent on this, which is interesting to know. If you want to highlight your rivets before you paint or anything like that, you can just put it on and then wipe it off, and it kind of leaves that recessed rivets slightly darker than the surrounding plastic, so you can get a good idea if you're re-riveting something how well your riveting has gone on. So that's another good use for them. But anyway, that's all we're needing them to do tonight. We're just needing them to add a bit of greasy colour shading to the inside of the radiators. Realistically, you're not going to see that much. The apertures are that tight, you're not going to see them, but we know the details there, and I'm happy enough with it. So the main thing now is to actually get this together, because what I want to do is get this together and then leave it a couple of days to cure up, so we avoid any possibilities of ghost seaming, because that is just the bane of every modeler. So what I'm going to do is we use my standard Revell contactor and Tamiya extra thin mix. I'm going to get the cockpit in first with this front sort of radiator housing. I haven't bothered weathering that. You're not going to see it in this particular build, but if I was doing an open cowling, which to be honest I might buy another one of these kits and do that, because it's really, the engine detail is absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you can see that, that's all weathered up and it is just stunning. Really nice inverted V12, beautiful engine. So if you wanted to display this with engine cowlings open, you know, world's your oyster. You can add wiring and whatnot, and you're going to make a beautiful model out of it. But as I said, I'm just going for a clean line, so it'll all be closed up. But I thought you'd like to see how it would look with a little bit of weather on it, and it looks lovely. So back to the task in hand. We've got to get this radiator in the front here, and we're going to get the cockpit assembly in here on one side, and then we'll be ready to join the two fuselage halves together, get the wings joined together and mate it all together, and then we can set it aside for a few days whilst I work with the other build that I'm starting. So give me a second to organise all my glues and stuff. We'll come back and we'll start getting this together. Right, got a new tube of Revell contactor. My old one is just about finished. It's done a lot of models out. So making sure that you've got the small piping to the front. This is slightly shaped to the contour of the aircraft. So there's a locating pin just on that front ring, and that sits in really rather nicely, like so. And then the engine goes through that. You've got to locate the exhaust shrouds into the exit, or the piece of the fuselage where they go in, and you've got to locate the cockpit into the sidewall of the fuselage. If that would just stay in, we'll be doing well. There we go. I'll just use a little bit of extra thin to aid the curing. I don't know why they do, they just seem to work with each other very well. Flash off pretty quickly. Right, so what we'll do is we'll not actually put glue on this part at the moment, but we'll get it in position. So spinner, or the crank, going through the center, and then locate the exhaust ports in the aperture that they exit from, and then this back deck just locks into this little half bulkhead here. And you'll see here you've got this little detent, and that's for that back deck to lock into as well there. So that's a good fit there. And you'll see it locks into the top here, and then this front bulkhead rests against this part here. There's like a line there, and that rests against that. So what we can do now is, now that we've gotten this into position we're happy with, so we'll have a look and see where it's contacting the surface, and then on the back of it we'll just come in with a bit of Revell contactor and just wick it into that joint. There we go. So we can wick it into there. We can wick it along here and up the back here. Now it will flow nicely into the gaps, and all we need to do now is just wait a second, hold, and let it grip. So let it flash off and let it take a grip of the plastics. And to aid that, we'll just come in and we'll brush it over with a little bit of extra thin, and that will aid the plastic bond, like the chemical reaction, hot glue action. So you just press and hold and just let it bite. There's no rush here. The more time you take, the better it is. It just means you're going to get a better joint. And once we've got this back piece in, then we're going to wick a little bit of glue along the front of this bulkhead, and that will be the cockpit pretty solidly in. But the most important joint is the back here. Okay, that's taken a grip, which is good. Now we've got this bottom plate here that goes on the bottom of the cockpit. We need to make sure we orientate that properly. It'll only go one way, so if you try and put it on the wrong way, it won't go. So just dry fit it. It fits the 4 pins on the bottom of the cockpit floor. There we go. That fits nicely. So again, we can just come in and a little drop of contactor. Like so. We get that cockpit floor in, and this will help line up the cockpit into the other half of the fuselage. So we just get that down, press it home, then we can come in on this side of the fuselage with some contactor, and this joint here, sorry, not contactor, extra thin, that joint there. So those joints, and just press and hold, and then just give it a chance to flash off and bite the plastic. It doesn't take long. There we go. Pretty much got a grip there. And that's turning into a more solid construction, which is good. That's what we want. Now we'll need just to wick a bit of glue, so a little of Tamiya extra thin, and just wick it along that front joint. And then just gentle pressure on the front, and that's becoming a more sturdy construction. And just make sure that those exhaust stubs are going into their aperture properly. And that's half the cockpit in. It's starting to look really good. Now is the time to dry fit though. before we commit to glue. So again, you need to make sure you locate the pins. Now the pins are really good fit on these. Just clips together beautifully, and with this full piece on the floor here, you end up getting a really good position with the rest of the rear deck up here and the front here, and the instrument cowling. It all fits really nicely, and then you just knit together this front piece here, and then that, just a bit of pressure there. So pressure in the right places and glue, this thing's going to go together nicely. So that's the next job to do, glue. So again, just gently pull it apart, and we'll just get in here with a Revell contactor. I won't bother putting any here and here. We'll use Tamiya extra thin for that, but what we will do is the side of the cockpit. So just gently, don't go overboard. Let the normal capillary action of the contactor flowing out the needle do the work for you, because it will naturally wick onto the joint without you having to squeeze. You're not needing loads, you just need a nice even coating. Don't rush, because this doesn't flash off just too quickly. So you've got plenty of time just to lay down that nice bead. There we go. I'm not going to bother doing the front, because that will be loose enough that we can get the contactor in to glue that up. Now remember, in the hinges, again, I am not too fussed if this rod is glued tight. We can just position it and glue it. I've actually glued the wrong side on because I want to go on the other side, but never mind, we'll figure that one out. So again, coming back in with the two sides, first thing to marry up is the pins on the rear fuselage. That will aid then the rest of the location. Get that cockpit in place, get that joint there with that cockpit floor brace in place across the wings, and then gently nip together there. That's what you want, that cockpit all lined up nice and neat and even. And then we're going to get some tape, which I've got some here. Pieces I've had lying around for a little while, saving for this. I'm going to put a piece on the top here. So squeeze, tape, pull tight and pull over, and then we're going to put a piece of tape on the bottom fuselage here. Like so, just to hold that joint. Now let's get the rudder in. So they just click in those two little detents. There's one, there is two. Little fig leaf, but they go in and they click in, and then that's that rudder together. And then we want to just press and hold and let that glue bond. And make sure we've got good alignment. Always, always, always check your alignment, especially if you've had a little bit of flash off time on this glue, because it will grip pretty quickly. There we go. We've still got a moving tail, so we're okay there. Right, now this is where we come in with a little bit of extra thin, and we'll just brush the joint down. And that will just help aid the glue in action. I'm just beginning to wonder if I've forgotten to put the tail wheel in. Could be. I'll just check that, because I can't even see the tail wheel for the life of me. Oh, here it is. No, the tail wheel can go in after, so that's alright. Along the top seam, nice and steady, no rush. Don't try and put loads of glue down because it'll only dribble down the sides and have the potential for ruining the detail. And this is where we had the alteration on the tail, so just wick that glue in there and then just gently press together, but being careful to avoid too much glue going anywhere near your fingers. Cant the tail to one side and we can wick a little bit of glue down here into that joint there, and then I'm going to get a peg, my trusty rubberized closed peg, and we're going to just peg that joint there. Perfect, that's what I want. Right, moving to the front. Well, actually no, what I'm going to do is get some fresh tape. We're going to tape the rest of the fuselage up, just to secure it in place. So one across the spine here, and then one across the rear here. There we go. And we put a bit over the back as well. So instantly we've got a nice piece of fuselage nicely jointed together. Bit of glue in here. So I just need to make sure that's locked in. How it's locked in at the front. And what we can also do is we can wick a bit of glue down there in that joint, and we can just aid the gluing process for the side of the fuselage. We'll just wick a little bit of extra thin now in to all these interior joints, and then we can just put a bit of pressure on there and make sure that's all in properly. So we can just press and hold just for a couple of minutes, and that will secure that all together. It's a good steady construction, and with plenty of test fitting and the like, there's no reason why it doesn't go together well. And the cockpit looks beautiful, it really does look nice. Right, next part, we've got the front here. So what we can do, just to add a bit of strength, is we can come in with our extra thin, because we haven't glued that piece in there. We can just put a little glue, not extra thin, contactor. We'll put a little bit of glue in there, and then we can burst that together. Just before we go too far, we'll just glue these joints as well, top and bottom. There we go. Just line it all up, and then we want to just press it together. Fits lovely. Really, really nice fit. And I've been quite looking forward to getting this to this point. This is always one of my favourite parts of construction, is when you're actually getting a significant proportion of the model built. We are going to need to tape this up though, just to give it something to hold on to. So I'll get a couple of bits of tape. Again, make sure it's all lined up. Tape over the top and tape over the bottom. Try and avoid taping anywhere where you're going to foul putting on these engine panels. There we go. So that's it all taped up. Now what we can do is just to check the position of the crank. Let's just pop on the spinner and make sure It's okay, and it's a bit off. I did think it was a little low. So we're going to have to do a little bit of finagling, but I think we could probably get away with doing that once the cowling's on, because just a little bit of down pressure on the nose, and it's matching up lovely. So nothing just deadly. It's always good to check to see if there's any errors or areas that are going to need extra attention. Right, so the next thing to go on is the upper cowling for the gun breeches, and then we've got a strengthening spar that goes from the front to the rear. So I'm going to go and dig that out. So give me a second to get the part, and then we'll come back and continue with construction. Right, got the part. It's part H6, and that's just to add strength from the rear breech section to the front. Now, this will see how well the fuselage has gone together when we see how well this is mated up with the sides. And intrinsically, it looks like it's not too bad. So I think what we need to do is glue it to one side, get our alignment right there, and then I might actually secure in one go. Right, I'm just going to use extra thin to glue this. Now, with parts like this, I tend to glue them to the side that they're fitting to naturally. Fits well to one side, glue it and let it cure. It's got a lovely joint there. Fits well in there. There's a tiny step there, but it's nothing much to worry about. So a little bit of pressure will relieve that step, but we want to make sure that when we put pressure on here, this side, it doesn't distort the joint on that side. Hence why you just glue it one side at a time. Glue it and let it cure. So we give it a couple of minutes and just organize and test fit some of these other panels, and then we'll come back and look at gluing this side, and also look at getting some of these other panels in. So back in a moment.